The way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For we must find the next whiskey bar. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you. I tell you we must die. Oh, Alabama, we now must say goodbye. We'll lose our good old mama and must have whiskey.
All right, that is La Lenya in Bertolt Brecht's revolutionary play called The Rise and Fall of the City of Mahagony, which we've played before when we were doing the series on the Weimar Republic with Richard Wolff, who joins us right now. Richard Wolff, of course, is the revered and renowned economist, Marxist economist. He's a historian, philosopher, psychologist, I believe, as well, and he speaks 3 languages fluently. His website is Democracy at Work. His big current publication, he's author of a lot of books, is Understanding Capitalism, and he is the host of Economic Update, heard here at WBAI every Thursday at 7 p.m. Welcome back, Dr. Wolff.
Glad to be here, Randy.
I know you're getting a lot of work these days. I don't know how you do it. You're ubiquitous and indefatigable. How do you do it, Dr. Wolff?
Well, let me tell you something that's bothering me a lot these days. I am very busy. I do a lot. I'm grateful for having the opportunity to do it. But these days, part of what you're seeing is not me. Are fakes. There's no nice way for me to say this, but artificial intelligence is enabling people to replicate my face, replicate my head, and my mouth moving, and the words coming out, and it sounds all like my voice. It's just not me. It's other people that are literally putting words in my mouth. And I say this to you because I want to plead with the world to be careful. If you notice a certain herky-jerkiness or words that are obviously being misspelled or misspoken, you're right. Pay attention to that. That's not me. My mastery of the English language is pretty good. I have written a dozen books and more, and I do public speaking. So if you hear me sounding or looking funny, that's because it's not me. And I'm not the only one, of course, who is subject to this. But we're living now in a world where literally you can have a picture of your face speaking with your voice, but saying things that are not only things you didn't say, but are often systematically contradictory, at variance, the opposite, etc. And it's very upsetting because I get emails now almost every day by disgruntled folks saying, "Did you really say X?" And then I ask them to send me the video, which they do, and I review it, which I do, and I explain to them, which I do, that this is not me. And they're very understanding. And as I say, I'm not the only one, but it's really something to watch out for. And if it hasn't bothered you yet, Randy, my guess is it will.
Well, it's just amazing. But nobody can do your voice. I'm an impressionist by trade for many years, and your voice is
oh, it is my voice, not an impression.
No, I said I do impressions. I know your voice. There's a lot of characteristics to it, and it's a difficult one for me to pick up. Now you can get the sound, but they can't get the style. There's no way AI could generate your style. You would know immediately that it's not Richard Wolff. And, it puts you in a situation, come to think of it, that Eugene Debs faced in 1918, when there were articles published around the country in major newspapers saying that he supported the war, that he supported the draft, which he didn't. He didn't say anything about it because of the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act that came out in 1917. Didn't say anything. Finally, he flipped out because there were so many articles saying Debs supports the war that he went to Canton and he delivered that speech, and he was arrested and sent to jail for 10 years, even though he got out in 21. So it's a real danger when they misplace or, deviously miscommunicate what you have to say. Anything that really sticks out that they're saying about you, that you're saying about yourself that you're not saying?
Well, they are particularly these days interested in having me give a sustained analytical talk about events in and around Israel. I don't do that. I don't do that for a number of reasons. Folks have no doubt about where I stand on this question. I've never ducked the issue. When asked, I answer. But I pride myself on doing the kinds of analysis that other major mainstream outlets are afraid to do. I am by profession an economist, and I focus on the economic aspects, which are so often, how shall I put this politely, not honestly presented. And so I focus on the world economy. I focused on interest rates, tariffs, plenty of things for me to focus on.
Right.
I don't,
yes, go ahead.
I don't give other topics, and yet in recent days, I get emails of people who are upset with me for one reason or another, and by the way, on both sides, that what I just said about Israel or what I just said about Hamas or something like that is bothering them, and I have to explain I never said any of that. Well, they took my words and rearranged it with my face moving, and so people, I understand why they think it. And then I'm in this awkward position of explaining to them, which I can do with some detail, how if they look closely at that particular video, they'll see it was not produced by Democracy at Work, which is my organization. It was not in any way like the other things I do. And then they understand, but it's a royal pain in you-know-where.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. It's very unsettling. I've seen that AI work with other people, and I know it's not them speaking, but it looks pretty good. And if you don't have a trained eye, you could. I saw stuff with Trump that he didn't say that people put out there. And not that I like Trump, I'm not defending Trump, but it shouldn't be done to anybody, to be honest with you, unless you preface it by saying this is a parody. You have to say that. Because I do impressions. If I'm doing Ronald Reagan, he never said some of the things that I have him saying. You know what I mean? So I support the Sandinistas. He didn't say that, but whatever it is, you could, I did an impression of him, and that's all this is. And a bad impression of you by whoever's doing it. Now, I want to get to, speaking of economics, and what people don't want to hear from you is the state. I just played that cut from part of it from the rise and fall of the city of Mahagoni, which I think is kind of a musical metaphor where I want to take this. I didn't see that play, but I think there's some analogies there as to where we are, the rise and fall of the United States. Are we falling? And is there any way? Is there a net at the bottom?
If you want my honest answer,
yes, of course.
So far,
I'll go to AI if I didn't want it.
Right,
yes.
Exactly. I was about to say, if you don't want it, you now know how to rearrange it. Yes, we are falling, and we are exhibiting literally with each day more and more of the symptoms. And at this point, it's only a question in the minds of many of us. We may not say it, and I'm about to tell it to you now, so you'll know I'm different. I'm willing to say it. The only interesting question is how many more symptoms have to stick themselves into our faces before we as a people get together and understand where we are. I mean, for me, there were more than enough symptoms a couple of years ago, and there are many more now. Let me go through a very few of them just so you get a feeling. For a good several years now, a weird theme has woven its way through the financial literature of our day. And by financial literature, I mean the Economist magazine, the Financial Times, a newspaper coming out of England, uh, all kinds of public affairs, the Wall Street Journal, the business section of the New York Times, wherever you might look for mainstream and even not so mainstream economic literature. Here is the following strange theme: business leaders, political leaders, and academics are quoted repeatedly talking about how great our economy is, and then expressing total puzzlement that the polls of the American people show that they don't understand how great the economy is at all. They keep saying the economy for them, where they stand, looks terrible, and the future worse still. I'll give you examples. The New York Times Siena College poll, an important poll that people watched, came out last week and said that 66%, that's two-thirds, of Democrats in America have a favorable view of socialism, whereas much less, a much lower number in the low 50s had a favorable view of capitalism. Okay, and why is that? Is it because they really like socialism? Well, the truth is, as the polls show, that most people have the vaguest idea of what socialism is. What these polls are really testing is how good they feel about the capitalism they live and work every day in. And this is a sign that they don't like it. It's not doing very well for them. It just really isn't. And then we have the Gallup poll, also last week, the most recent one, showing much the same thing among young people and old people. The disgruntlement, the dissatisfaction with our capitalist system means that the last thing on earth the majority of Americans would apply to our economy now is quote unquote great. Well, we understand why Mr. Trump says that. He's the president. He wants the economy to be great because he knows that if he admits that it isn't, everybody will point their finger, or at least a lot of people will, at him as being the reason it isn't. And maybe you could excuse a few politicians around him. But in fact, it isn't just Mr. Trump. It isn't just a few conservative Republicans. It's most of the Republican Party and a good bit of the Democratic Party and most of the executives in this country and a good bit of the people who write in the mainstream media. And they keep saying, well, you know, the average person is ignorant. The average person doesn't look at the statistics the way we educated people do. And so I remember thinking to myself, and this started some years ago, well, I mean, I've been through the education system. I have my PhD in economics. I went to Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. I'm like a poster boy for elite education. And I'm here to tell you, with all my economics training, I think that people are right. And therefore, I think that people at the top are liars or wrong or some combination. And, at first I felt odd and out of place. But as the numbers came in and as I looked at the economy with the training I've had, I became more, not less, convinced that I was right. And then last week, Randy, the Bureau of Labor Statistics issued a really blockbuster announcement. They announced that over the last year and longer, there have been systematically failed announcements as to the exact number of jobs that were or were not being filled. And by not being accurate, they meant, and they gave us the numbers, around 900 and plus thousand people less had jobs than had been announced to have jobs. In other words, the job situation was deteriorating in the last half year of Mr. Biden's administration and right through the first half year of Mr. Trump's. And so there we have an extraordinary illustration that in the long run, and I think history proves this, the feelings polled in the people about the economy are a much better guide. Not that they can't make mistakes from time to time, it's a much better guide than the paid spokespersons for the political, economic, and academic uh, mainstream people at the top who cannot be trusted because they are speaking what they want and they're not speaking what is in fact the truth. And the reality is our economy is in extraordinary shape. Let me give you another example. Mr. Trump's tariffs. Now, we've been reading about it literally every day for many, many months. And if you remember, we read about it a lot in the first 4 years of Mr. Trump's presidency, his first time, and we read it often enough in Biden's years as well. People don't seem to understand what a desperate sign of decay those tariffs are. Now, of course, the president would never tell you that. Oh, no, he is showing what a tough guy he is. Listen to him. They've been cheating us and they've been pulling the wool over. By the way, describing an American government, which includes him, as being a bunch of real dunces who couldn't see straight and do well, and all nonsense. Here's what's going on. A tariff is a tax. It is paid by whoever imports goods and services into the United States. Most of the entities that import anything into the United States are American businesses. So the tariff falls on them. Okay? So if an automobile company produces something in Europe or Asia and brings the automobile into the United States, they pay the tariff. If an American company brings in French wine or Japanese electronics or Brazilian coffee, then the company here that brings it in pays the tariff. Okay, that's the reality. And what it means is the United States is saying to its trading partners, the countries that produce a lot of what's brought into the United States. And let me remind you, the three most important countries whose output comes into the United States are first and foremost Mexico and Canada, our two neighbors, North and South. That's where most of the imports come from, not from far away, but from real close. And those are our neighbors, those are our allies, they used to be our friends. To put a tariff means we're saying to them, you're perfectly welcome to keep selling your oil, your gas, your lumber, or whatever else, if you're Canada, or your avocados, or your corn, or all the other things if you're Mexico. But we're charging a fee for you to do business in the United States. You're going to have to give Uncle Sam The importing company, in any way, is going to have to give Uncle Sam money. In other words, you have to pay to sell in the United States. You have to help pay that tariff. Because if you leave it entirely to the American company to pay it, because they're the ones who get the bill, if you don't help them, if you don't lower your price compared to what it was to offset, at least in part, the tariff that the American importer has to pay, well, then you're not going to be able to trade here in America. We're charging a fee to do business with us. And that is freaking out the Mexicans and the Canadians. The third country, by the way, is China. We don't care about China, we say, because it's our adversary. But we can't say that about Mexico and Canada, and they're more important than China, a lot more. So we are really hurting the Canadians, and we're hurting the Mexicans. Did they hurt us? Not at all. They only sent here what Americans wanted to buy. If Americans didn't want to buy it, they couldn't have sold it here. Nobody's holding a gun to anybody's head. The Mexicans and the Canadians sold the products that Americans chose to buy from them. And Americans chose it without any coercion on them whatsoever. So we're getting along real well. The Canadians are doing reasonably well. The Mexicans are doing reasonably well. Could do better, sure, we all could. But we were living in what now looks like wonderful, long gone harmony. And that harmony was smashed by Mr. Trump. It had been rolling along for a century or longer without anything like this. We are hurting them. They can't sell in this country what they need to sell because we're suddenly taxing the importer huge, 25%, 35%, 50% on their steel and their aluminum and so forth and so on. They can't sell here. Americans won't buy Mexican goods anymore because of the tariff we have to pay because the importer jacks up the price to you and me. Have you noticed what happened to the price of coffee in recent months?
Yeah.
It's 30%. 30% in 1 year. And why is that? Well, it turns out that our biggest provider of coffee is Brazil. And Mr. Trump wants to spring the convicted felon who used to run that country, wants to spring him out of jail, something we would never let any other country do to us, but he wants to do it, so he hits them with a big tariff. Whoa, the American companies bringing in the coffee that we drink, you know, Starbucks and those folks, they don't want to have to pay all of that extra tariff to Uncle Sam as he goes about punishing Brazil. So they pass the price on to you and me. And it turns out more and more Americans can't afford the morning latte they had gotten used to. That's how this works. And this is a terrible blow to Brazil. And guess what Brazil has done? Because Brazil not only supplied coffee to us, but Brazil is a major producer of soybeans and other products that Americans buy, or let me take that back, used to. The Brazilians can't sell that in America because of Mr. Trump's tariffs. But the Brazilians have another place to go to sell their coffee and to sell their soybeans. It's called the BRICS. It's China and India and enough other countries that they're the majority of the people on this planet are in BRICS. And right. Brazil is shifting its business there. So we don't get Brazilian coffee the way we used to. We have to go now find the coffee from somebody else and hope that Mr. Trump won't whack a tariff on them.
Right.
Meanwhile, the price of coffee, of course, is jacked up to cover all of the chaos, all of the change, all of the new storage facilities that have to be erected to handle the coffee that comes from here rather than there. These are the kinds of economic issues that show you are becoming the rogue economic player in the world economy, the weird economy. No other country is slapping tariffs on the rest of the world. There are 194 countries. The United States has slapped tariffs on virtually every one of them. Is there another major world leader who is slapping tariffs on everybody? I'll give you the answer. No.
What about India? Can you throw in India because we imposed
Perfect.
tariffs on them
India,
and
yeah,
the oil?
let's
Yes.
let's do India. I mean, there's so many examples. You could literally throw out the name of any country. It's too easy, which is why that's why I started off by saying, the symptoms are overwhelming. But let's take India. We begin with noticing, in case you hadn't kept track, that India recently surpassed China as, by population, the largest country on this planet. We're talking about more than 1.4 billion people. Okay? That is about 6 or 7 times the size of the United States. So we, relative to them, you got a small cat barking, if that's the right metaphor, at an elephant. I mean, so we need India every bit as much as they need us.
Yeah.
They produce all kinds of things in India because it's an economically growing country. Yes, it's much poorer than the United States, but in recent years, it has been growing much faster than the United States, so it's catching up. Hasn't caught up as much as China, but it is catching up. It is a major player in the world, a dominant country alongside China in all of what we call Asia, which is where most of the people on this planet live, in that part of the world. India is super important, has an immense army, possesses and uses nuclear weapons. Do I have to say more? We need it as a friend. And every American government for the last 75 years since India achieved its independence, it was once part of the British Empire. For the last 75 years, every American government, Republican and Democrat alike, has gone out of its way to try to win over a friendship and a solidarity between the United States and India. Until now. India, being a developing country and being an immense developing country, needs to import oil and gas. It is not, at least not now and not yet, self-sufficient in energy. And if you want to raise the standard of living of your people, which is a number one priority of poor countries around the world, including India, then you have to import oil and gas. And over the last many, many, many years, India has imported oil and gas from Russia because Russia is a major producer, the second or third most important producer of oil and gas in the world is Russia. So they have a long-standing, perfectly natural relationship because they are near each other geographically, that Russia can export oil and gas to India. And so India's entire industrial development over the last 25 years has relied upon Russian oil and gas. And by the way, in case you think that's odd, you shouldn't, because it's true of another country you may have heard of, Germany, whose economic dominance in Europe over the last 40 years is totally and utterly dependent on Russian oil and gas, which the Germans likewise, with conservative and socialist governments alike, cultivated until now, until the United States decided, and Mr. Trump most recently, although he's not the only president who did this sort of thing, but he's doing it more than anybody else has, certainly more than Mr. Biden did. He wants the Indians to pay the same bills that America doesn't want to pay. The United States puts a tariff on Indian goods coming into the United States, one of which, for those that are interested, is that the Indians produce a great deal of the medicines that Americans rely on. The pill you take is probably got in it what are called pharmaceutical feedstocks. That is, parts of the medicine are mass produced in India, sometimes all of it is, that you rely on to handle whatever chronic problem you or the people in your family suffer from. Now, India, and there are other things too, he's putting a tariff. He's saying to the Indians, well, you may have tens of thousands of people whose jobs depend on producing those pharmaceuticals that you've been sending to our country for decades. We don't care. You're now going to have to pay a tax. If you don't, the company in the United States that brings your pharmaceuticals in, they'll have to pay. And that will be a bill. And they may go to another country and stop buying from you. We don't care. We have to take care of our problems, Mr. Trump says. That's what America first means when he talks. We're taking care of our country. And if that damages yours, too bad. You lose. We don't care. That ought to remind people listening to me, because it ought to remind you of this thing that you've heard about called colonialism or imperialism. That's when rich European countries like Britain or France or the Netherlands or Germany or Italy snatched up the rest of the world, Asia, Africa, Latin America, used them to enrich Europe at their own expense. That's what we're doing, only we're doing it on a global level, and nobody else is as strong and powerful for the moment as we are to rip the world off, which is what we're doing. That's what the tariffs are designed to do. More money for the American government. Let the rest of the world adjust. You want to do business in our country? Pay the fee. It's an entrance fee. And if you don't pay, you can't sell here. And we don't care how many people that throws out of work. Look at Mr. Trump. In recent months, he holds press conferences, and standing next to him is von der Leyen, the woman who runs the European Union, proudly saying, we've committed to invest $1 trillion in the United States in the 10 years coming. Let me take you through what that means. That means money that would otherwise have been invested in Europe, because it's the Europeans' money, is going to be coming here. Those are jobs that are not going to be created there with their money, but are going to be created here with their money. That is lovely for the United States. It is a disaster. You're making the rest of the world pay because your economy is so poor that it desperately has to work out a deal with you. No, no, no. The deal is, how much can we threaten you to squeeze out of you what has to come here to our country? You know what this will produce? This will produce a level of hatred for the United States, which is going to be blamed for the economic problems of every one of the countries hit by a tariff from Mr. Trump. He may be able, for a while, to pull the wool over Americans' eyes and make them think he's magically making nice things happen. He isn't. Nice things are not what we're talking about. Horrible things that previous American governments didn't do because they didn't have to, because the decline of the American empire hadn't gone so far. We now live in a country where we can't produce most of the goods we consume. That's why, if you look at the label of the clothes you're wearing, or the appliances you're using, or the automobile you're driving, if you look carefully, you'll see it was made somewhere else.
Yeah.
The highest tech we used to think comes out of Silicon Valley is now equaled or improved upon by the Chinese.
Yeah.
We are in a new situation, and the most remarkable thing about it is the denial with which Americans greet this and the make believe in which they try to turn all of the symptoms that I've just listed and many more into their opposites. It's as if we were living in an AI world instead of the real one that we have to survive in. Make believe like this is a very short term high, followed by a really long low.
Wow. Can I ask you, because we have 10 minutes left, speaking of China, India, I want to go to that, get to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference, and India was there, and Russia. About 40 world leaders were there. And then there was like some BRICS action happening. How significant was that conference in China with the SCO?
Absolutely historic, which is why, to illustrate my point about denial, that is why we are in the fix we're in, because Mr. Trump breezily dismissed it. So did the few mainstream media wrote about it. You know, Mr. Trump sent a message. It was really for the American media to understand how subservient they are. He gave them, here's how we handle it. And Mr. Trump's message was, congratulations, Xi Jinping of China and Mr. Modi from India. I wish you a wonderful conference as you conspire against the United States. In other words, Mr. Trump needs to see this as an annoying event of little people who can't wield much in the way of weapons and therefore don't have to be taken seriously, don't have to be sat down with to work out a deal. They can be breezily dismissed. This is childish, not upon them, upon Mr. Trump. Shame on him. Shame on those who support him. The people gathered in Shanghai and then who went to Beijing, those people represent the majority of the human beings on this planet. That's right. India and China, 1.4 billion people each. The United States, 330 million. The United States has 4.5% of the world's people. China and India alone, but together with their BRICS allies, are well over 50% of the people on this planet. Who do you think we're fooling? I know it is childishly easy to imagine that those enormous countries are desperately poor beggars, but they aren't anymore. They haven't been that way for decades. The biggest, fastest train system on earth is in China. The most developed high-tech payment system isn't your credit card or mine, but is the payment system pioneered by the Chinese. And I could go on and on. We are not the position we were in 40 or 50 years ago, but we're like Wile E. Coyote. We ran off the edge of the cliff and didn't realize there's no cliff under us anymore.
Beep, beep.
We're running and running and we're about to collapse.
Wow. It
That's
does.
the reality. And I don't know how, other than to give example after example, that's what I do
Yeah.
in my analytic work. And that's what I appeal to people. Pay attention here. You don't have to interpret it the way I do. Of course not. You don't have to agree with everything I say. But this make believe in which we are rolling along and we have a president who gives us the theatric of smiting the world with his tariffs. I mean, it's childish. We will be looking back on this in a very few years, embarrassed by what we did.
Yeah, it's amazing. We have 2 minutes left. I wanted to ask you if there was a doomsday clock for this economy, where it's going to go to a crash. Where are we? How close are we to midnight?
No one knows. And if I gave you a prediction, you shouldn't listen to me. And by the same token, anybody else who does that, no. The financial press these days is full of two things. I'm going to quote Jamie Dimon, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, who yesterday or the day before bemoaned the fact that the U.S. economy is weakening and he doesn't know how fast it'll go or how far it will fall. Now, he gave his interview the way he loves to, as if he were a spectator of this phenomena rather than one of the people who's causing it to happen. That's because he knows how bad it is and he wants to crawl away from the responsibility that is properly his. The reality is we are on the edge of a recession. The revision of those numbers I talked to you about shows us that employment is really falling off a cliff, and we still have 3% inflation. In our food, we have inflation's closer to 5%. Very few workers in America are experiencing a rising wages to match the rising prices in the grocery store, and on and on. We're in trouble, deep trouble. How bad it'll get, how soon it might crash, nobody knows that. That's subject to a million variables. Hopefully, in the time between now and then, more people will understand we've got to reorganize our relations with the rest of the world and amongst ourselves. Because another symptom of a falling empire is that we are killing each other slowly by denying medical care to millions of Americans, which we still do, and then by the social divisions in our country, which we all know about because they're on the headlines, in which Americans talk about being closer to a civil war than they have been since the last time we fought a civil war back in the middle of the 19th century.
Wow. Economic update here at WBAI, heard every Thursday at 7 p.m. Go to the website, Democracy at Work, and do not watch these AI-generated speeches lectures by Dr. Wolff. We're going to go out. We started out with a Brecht tune. We're going to go out with another Brecht tune. Actually, this is Brecht and Eisler, Hans Eisler. You know this tune, United Front, right? Is it United Front?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Wolff. You can start playing that now, because I love it. You know this tune. All right. Thank you for all that you do. And this is definitely not AI, because nobody could. There you go. You're the only one who understands what they're saying.